So, first, I guess I wanted to start with a quick introduction. I am Anthony Moser. I'm the board president of Neighbors for Environmental Justice and for EJ. We're on the southwest side of the city. Our purpose is educate, advocate, organize. I'm also a software developer, but I prefer to think of myself as a folk technologist. That's folk as in like folk music, where a good song might only have three chords, but it tells a story and people can sing along to it. N4EJ formed in 2018 when a hot mix asphalt plant called Matt Asphalt opened up across the street from McKinley Park. And as you might imagine, we have developed some opinions about air quality as a result. We did get kind of into the sensors and monitoring from the beginning. So we installed our first purple air sensors in 2018. We did put together this time-lapse video where you can see the air quality changing as the plant starts up early in the morning. There we go. And put together some other tools. This one is smellsbad.today, which people can use to quickly submit air pollution complaints, and it's just links to 311 and the Illinois EPA. And done some visualization of the 311 complaint data. So yeah, we've been doing this kind of stuff one way or another for a while. There was a Microsoft Eclipse air monitoring project for a minute. And then last year we purchased another 20 purple air sensors and started the Southwest Air Quality Index, which is going to be a local program building out just community monitoring. Don't want to spend a lot of time on the health impacts. I think people probably generally know that pollution is bad for you. But I think it's worth just taking a little time occasionally to look at it. It's really an amplifier. It introduces new health problems, but it also makes existing ones worse. Respiratory illness, cardiac risk, cancer. It's not on here, but even suicide has correlations with elevated rates of particulate matter. So it's serious. What is ChicagoAQI? It is a data tool and an organizing tool. Basically, it lets people suggest locations that the city should put air monitors. And it also lets them use data to explore environmental risk and exposure in their neighborhood. And it creates opportunities for organizing. These are the links. We're going to take a look at the site here. We do have it translated into Spanish and Chinese as well. We've got a lot of folks who don't speak English in our neighborhood. So let's take a look at the site. I'm going to change the shape of the browser here a little bit. There we go. This is the default view where you can suggest a location. It is mobile friendly. It'll work pretty well on phones, tablets. And like I said, we do have it translated. If you want, you can click around and just choose a location by doing that. You can drag it. If you are on something with like location enabled, you can use your location, and takes a second to ask, but or you can just search for something. Actually, if anybody has a suggestion of like an intersection or an address that would be a good location for an air monitor, just drop it in the chat. Can I get a suggestion? Sounds like an improv troupe, I know, but if anybody has one, no, I'll just do Matt Asphalt here, I guess. They're at 2055 West Pershing Road. Oh, Lawrence and West. Actually, yeah. All right, yeah. Well, Lawrence and Weston's a good one. I used to live right up there, actually. There's where the old bowling alley was. Where are we at? Probably not the most efficient way to do this, but okay, Kedzie, Madison. Okay, yeah. You know, I don't know if the bowling alley is still there or not, I guess. It's been a long while since I was up there. But Lawrence and Western, that's a good location. And so I think that's probably what we just call it. What made you think of this one? Is it just a lot of vehicle traffic, or is there any particular reason that you thought this? Okay, just two very busy arterials. All right, so submit. And it's going to pop up and say, thanks, your suggestion has been submitted. Feel free to send more. And then there's an offer to put in your email address if you want to sign up for any kind of updates. Now, it will automatically redirect you then to this Explore Data tab. And this is pretty cool. It's showing you where your suggestion was, right? It's identifying the community area and the census tract. If you've picked a spot that's in an industrial corridor, then it will identify that as well. And then everything here on the right, these are the environmental justice index values from the cumulative impacts assessment the city completed in 2023. And these are the different measurements that they combined to create this index value. And you can see for the selected areas, if I choose a different one, you can kind of just see whatever part of the city you want to look at, where it lands as far as the percentile. And also you can see this is the actual distribution of the data, which I think is kind of interesting. Some of these are very different than others. Some of them are very strongly clustered and others are more evenly distributed. But in addition to being able to check out those individual jitter plots over here, you can also take any of those index values and see them as a map for the city. So by default, it shows you particulate matter, but you want to look at ozone. It takes a moment to refresh, but come on now. There we go. Ozone's actually got kind of a different distribution than a lot of other things. And this one here, we've got linguistic isolation, which, as you might see here, there's a correlation between pollution and linguistic isolation, which is one of the reasons that we really wanted to make sure to get this stuff translated so that it would be accessible to people who are directly being affected by these issues. And the other things that you can do here, you can learn a little bit more about these index values. You can, linguistic isolation just means there are a lot of people here whose first language isn't English or who don't speak English at all. In Chicago, you can see, so this is the linguistic isolation map. If we take one that is pollution burden, which is one of the kind of subtotals of the different pollution exposures, you can see there's a lot of it that corresponds here. This is in industrial corridors and along 55. Despite the fact that this is, part of these index values, the city only accepts air pollution complaints in English, and the state is the same way. You can also turn on this layer and see what has been suggested so far. Or if you want to download a copy of it, you can download a CSV of the suggestions. So that's the site. We've also got this FAQ in here with some basic information about what air monitors are for and how pollution is harmful, nature of this project. But rather than read you this, I'm just going to go back over here to these slides. So you may be wondering at this point why the city is installing air monitors and why we need to know where they should go to begin with. The backstory here is that Chicago uses planning and zoning to concentrate pollution in communities of color, which is environmental racism. And the city signed a voluntary compliance agreement with the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development in 2023, promising to do a lot of different things meant to address environmental racism. This was signed just before Lori Lightfoot left office. And one of the things that is in there specifically is a community air monitoring network that would be concentrated in environmental justice neighborhoods and co-developed with organizations from those neighborhoods. Unfortunately, the city is sort of an unreliable partner on this. I don't know if y'all might have seen back in December, the news came out about it, but essentially back, the actual event happened in November. The point person, the staffer who was coordinating with all these different organizations and had actually ordered the monitors and was working with everybody to make a plan to put them up, was pushed out of the Department of Public Health. And at that point, that was sort of left all of the organizations that were part of this project with a lot of open questions where it was not clear who we'd be working with there, or when there would be further activity, or what this meant for the timeline of getting them up. Just kind of threw everything into a state of uncertainty. And so where we found ourselves as an organization in December was asking, like, how do we move forward when these things are uncertain? And we needed to know where to put them, right? And we wanted to have community input. That's a big part of this whole approach. And we also did not want to wait indefinitely. For example, the city has had that cumulative impacts assessment completed in 2023 and was supposed to launch its own data dashboard for exploring those EJ index values in early 2024, and has still not actually done any of that. Now, this is the part where I want to kind of take a step back and talk about what it means to think of this tool as a political technology. I think a lot of times technology and people who work in tech are focused on how to do things and how things work, and sometimes in interesting or clever solutions. But there's also an important aspect of it, which is understanding what does it do, and not just in the literal sense of gathering data or performing a particular activity, but in the larger sense of like, what is it able to do to help change the situation? So air monitors are a tool for gathering data about air quality, but they are also a tool for changing people's awareness of their physical and political environment. It takes something very intangible that they might just be used to and makes it something real that they can visualize. And once you start thinking about pollution in a visual and kind of concrete way, it leads directly to questions about political inequity and why pollution is concentrated in the ways that it is. I would say that all technology is actually political and carries those political implications. And even though a lot of times people like to think of it as a neutral process, it's not. There was a really good essay that I'd read recently talking about defining AI by its political goals rather than its underlying technologies and underlying methods, where they pointed out a handgun and a stun gun operate on completely different physical principles, but they're obviously both tools that the police use to maim and kill people. Right? There's an element where they are exactly the same by their use. And so we wanted to think about what does it mean for us to make a tool that will give us the data that we need, but also work towards the political goals that we have attached to it. So our data requirements are pretty straightforward. We needed a location. I wanted it to be something that was latitude, longitude, rather than something that was just by address or, more generic. I really wanted it to be intuitive and easy to use. We want a lot of context just because the dots by themselves aren't going to tell you that much. And if you can learn a little bit about why people are recommending these areas, it adds a lot of kind of important nuance into understanding what's happening in different neighborhoods. And we wanted a representative sample, which kind of circles back to the language access point, right? Which means we need to include people who have been excluded by the city so far. And the other thing that was a part of the design consideration here was wanting the data to be immediately open. We didn't want it to be behind a gate where they'd have to come to us or really do anything in order to be able to access it. This isn't just a tool that we wanted to be an N4EJ tool. We wanted to put this out there so that if other groups or if a class wanted to decide that they were going to embrace this as a project and go learn a lot from different people in their neighborhood, that they could gather that data and have access to it. Or that if other organizations wanted to make use of it, that they could do that too. So in terms of what that means for this project, it gives us a way to get that data. We did get it translated. We have a couple of people that we've been working with to try to translate more of our materials. Importantly, it let us act without waiting for the city's permission. The city is in limbo, right, where the person who was coordinating it was no longer working there and no clear individual was taking over that work. And so there is a Git repo, actually. I will put the link in the chat. So yeah, we wanted to be able to act directly. And it also creates a mechanism for accountability where we can show where the monitors actually go as they do go up. And we can compare it to what was suggested. And we can see how well the input that we gathered matches what was actually done in the end. From an organizing perspective, the other thing that this tool gives you is a reason to talk with people. I think a lot of times when you are organizing and doing stuff, what you need is just a thing, like a reason that you can be having conversations with people about something. And this is a pretty good structure for us to do that. It starts with a way to take action immediately that also values and validates the knowledge that people have about their own neighborhood. Starting out with just like, we want to know what you know. We want you to tell us why this would be a good place to learn more. And at the same time, it turns around and offers new context around that knowledge and to make sense of those experiences, right? So if you've submitted a suggestion, we can tell you about the environmental index values for the area that you've chosen. And lastly, it does offer them the opportunity to sign up for that email list in order to stay connected and stay in tune. I actually think when you boil it down, a lot of organizing kind of follows that pattern. Like, you have a reason to talk to somebody. I want to say the thing that you're experiencing is real. I have more context that can help to make sense of it. We want to do something to change this. And we want to provide an action that people can take, and then an opportunity to stay connected. So coming back to the air monitoring part of this, if we're applying that framework of, what does this tool do to the air monitors themselves and not just the AQI tool, the community air monitors can make pollution visible. They can help people to understand what's happening in their own neighborhood. They can make something, they can remove plausible deniability from the city. So when, if they're trying to say they don't know that things are bad, you can use that to show that it is kind of provable. And it gives us another reason to talk. And of course, people use the data for research. And those things are all very valuable. but I think it's also worth remembering, right, that what community air monitors don't do, they don't actually clean the air, right? They're not making the air quality better. They don't result directly in enforcing regulations. And in fact, the monitors that the city's going to put up are not considered federal equivalent quality. And so like they won't directly be used for enforcement either. Their monitors can't make political donations, can't directly persuade politicians or officials, and can't change the transportation systems. I also think it's just really important when we're thinking about data tools to recognize when data is valuable but is not necessary for action. When it comes to air pollution, we know enough to take action. We know we need to reduce carbon emissions. We know vehicle emissions are the #1 source in Illinois. We know that the city has spent decades concentrating sources of pollution and truck routes in communities of color. Data is the answer if the problem is not knowing things. And so there's a question of audience here, where these are great tools for us to reach people who are in our communities and talk about these issues, but they are not necessary to persuade politicians, right? Or people who are not going to be persuaded by more data. And sometimes gathering data is used as a way to avoid taking action. Oh, we're taking this very seriously. We want to know more. We're going to get more information instead of doing something based on what we already know. And so I think I just would leave these open questions for when building political technology. I think it's important to ask, who is your audience? How do you use it to change things? And what does that mean for how you build it? So yeah, those are the slides that I've got presented here. I'm happy to take questions. I see we've got a couple in the chat already. Let's see.
There are. Yes. Thank you, Anthony. Yeah, I was going to say thank you so much for answering some of the questions along the way. I did note there was a couple. I'm not sure if you caught and answered or not, but there was a question earlier on what constitutes an industrial corridor.
Oh, I missed that one, but that's a good question. So the city literally it's a zoning classification. And the city literally has these areas that are zoned for heavy industry by right. And what that means is that, like, in McKinley Park, for example, this is, an industrial corridor. And when something like Matt Asphalt comes along, it is zoned by right for heavy industry. They don't need to get a zoning change. They didn't need to do a planned development process. There were literally 0 public meetings by the city or the state prior to the approval and opening of the plant. So the industrial corridors are a significant problem. And in particular, like, they're concentrated here on the south side and on the west side. And even though there's a little bit up here on the north side, the city has been actively moving things from these ones up here to these ones down here. That's actually kind of what the whole General Iron fight was about, was taking an old scrap metal shredder that had been up here for a long time and moving it down to the south side. And that's actually what triggered the complaint to the federal government that led to the agreement with HUD that required them to install these monitors. Let's see. So there's the GitHub repo. Yes, I'll put that one here in this chat. I'm just running it on. Yeah, it is intentional. I should be clear about this part. This is not like an accidental thing. The city has been doing this deliberately for a long time. And if you are trying to run it, I mean, I deployed this to Google Cloud Run. It's a Shiny app, which actually made the translation very awkward and difficult. So if you're trying to do something multilingual, that might not be the right package for it. As far as why they wouldn't use monitors that meet the federal standards, they are more expensive, and that's a whole other kind of related thing. There's a little bit of a different goal sometimes where you can get federal equivalent monitors aren't necessarily set up to automatically push like to a publicly accessible dashboard kind of stuff. So some of these more commercial ones are better suited to that task. I should mention the city does have some federal equivalent monitors that it had purchased and was looking to outfit on an electric van, but the person who was working on that project was pushed out. And so that is, right now those air monitors are all sitting on a shelf and the van is sitting in a parking lot. Gaps in existing monitor coverage, that is absolutely the case. It depends kind of on what you want to look at. So Purple Air is, basically consumer grade air monitoring. They're pretty cheap, but they're easy to put up all over. And if you're just looking at particulate matter, that's a really, I think they're great because, the level of precision required is not necessarily like we're doing, intense science about it all. There's something to be said about having things that are maybe a little bit less precise, but are scattered all over the place in greater abundance and getting you kind of a level of resolution that way. The US EPA does have only 3 monitors, I think, that are in the city itself. And they have gaps mostly in these industrial corridors. And there was a recent study found that the US EPA tends to site its monitors in whiter and more affluent neighborhoods. Yes, Ride Mansauer is the person who was working for the city and was pushed out. There was another article that came out in the Tribune, actually, where he finally went on record about it. So we were talking about, let's see, industrial pollution. I mean, industrial pollution is significant, and it certainly is a major contributing factor in, like in my neighborhood. But the sheer volume of vehicle traffic makes it overall a much bigger problem. And vehicle traffic also includes the diesel traffic, which is a substantial part of the problem. There are literal tons, right, of material going in and out on these trucks all day long. And the diesel emissions from those are themselves a source of pollution in addition to like the production of asphalt or production of other things. So, and actually warehouses are another major source where the buildings themselves are not required to get air permits, even though they become a hub of intense vehicle emissions. Let's see, existing air monitors. I mean, you can look at the Purple Air map and see where people have put those. And we are, like I said, we're working on that Southwest index and trying to put up more monitors ourselves. There's a fair amount all over the city. The city itself, though, has not put up any of the monitors in question yet. Right now, the last time we talked with them, their plan was to constitute, they'd hired a nonprofit that is going to constitute an advisory board that is supposed to provide them, with guidance and opportunities to engage and suggestions about where monitors can go, which seems like a long way to wait before actually beginning to do anything. And so our feeling was like, well, we can start engaging the community now, and we don't need to wait on the city to do that. Yeah. So,
Yeah. Thank you
any
for
other questions?
answering those questions. Yeah, folks, do continue to drop questions in the chat if you do have them. Um, I I have a few questions here as well. Let's see. Looks like maybe there is another question from Radar. Um, let me see. Let's try this. Um, I might be able to unmute you. We'll see if that works and see if Radar, if you're able to come off mute. If not,
Okay, I'm able to unmute. Could I start video just because I feel it would be personal, more personal?
let me see here. Okay.
Okay, quick intro. I'm Radar. My real name's Michael, but there's so many Michaels. Radar just makes everything easier. Anyway, yeah. So thank you, Michael, for hosting this, and also Anthony. Yes, I'm really impressed about this, and we're coming from South Louisiana, where we have the petrochemical industry just destroying us. And so I see this as something amazing that it's like we have to do this. And I like the approach of you can't say you didn't know. And so I'm going to see what I can do to see what I can do to help out, because as you know, in South Louisiana we have Cancer Alley, where they've taken Creole towns and villages that have been owned by these people for over 100 years, and now they just put up all these chemical plants, and it's killing people. And where we have the deaths and so forth that can provide evidence, but I think we really need to expand this, because this is a problem not only in Chicago, but it's also a problem in Louisiana, Texas, and especially in minority communities. So I really appreciate what you're doing here, sir. And I'm gonna jump on the GitLab and see what I can do to help. And thank you very much.
Yeah, no, I've read about the conditions, and yeah, Louisiana's got it rough. It's I mean, it's the same problem, just at a national scale as well as at a local one, where there's just intense concentrations of pollution.
Yeah, I know another question came in here of the suggestions for the locations of the monitors that you had showed earlier. Who made the suggestions that showed up on that map where you were
Well,
seeing?
I mean, so I guess I should mention, you saw we made one to begin with, right? And it's not that we require any form of registration. I specifically wanted to avoid anything that would kind of require people to disclose their identity or add that extra like friction for sharing where they'd like to see this stuff. These are suggestions that have come in from people since we've launched the tool. So we launched it earlier this month. We've put it out in our newsletter. We've shared it on our social media. And that's people have made different suggestions. If you do choose to download the suggestion data, you'll see it includes the extra context about what people would call something, and it also includes a unique session ID. So we do at least know that if somebody has put in 20 in a row or something like that, we would see that it came from the same session, and there's an opportunity to this is a pretty raw data gathering, and so one of the conditions tied to the air monitoring project is that the city is supposed to be concentrating them in environmental justice areas. And so like there's supposed to be more like on the south side and on the west side, and that's what we expect to see happen. But yeah, so we want to take this stuff under advisement at least. But ideal for Chicago's air quality outlook was in the range of practically achievable. I guess I'm not sure. There is no safe level of air pollution. Is maybe the place to start with. So our goal is not to say, oh, we want to be breathing, 10 instead of 15, or, for milligrams per cubic meter. Our goal is to have clean air to breathe. And I think sometimes there's also precision can be, it's not that it's not important, but precision can be sometimes unnecessarily limiting, where like we know we need to start moving in the right direction. And there are broad steps that we know we need to take. And that would be, so that's kind of, we're not trying to set a target and say we want to hit 0 or we're going to try to get to this or whatever. We want to see the city actively considering the impact of different things on air quality. We want to see them taking steps to reduce diesel pollution and factory pollution and other kinds of things. Yeah, we're more interested in moving in the right direction. How does the Chicago Department of Public Health collect the data shown up on the map now? So if you check it out here, these links, sorry, where am I at? Okay, sorry, 1 second. All right, these here are links to the Cumulative Impacts project. Neighbors for Environmental Justice was a part of that project. And there is a lot of context here about the methodology they used, how they calculated different scores, and where each specific data set came from. So some of these are originally from like federal data sets, I think. Some of them are more local. And we were trying to look, and they optimize things for a census tract level of detail. And this is a list of all the different things that they use to calculate them. Now, to be clear, I think indexes are always a little bit, by their nature, they are a statistical construction. So there are some places that would not technically count as EJ index areas, even though they are across the street from a factory, because it's not the right combination of things. So I think the goal of that process is less to identify like, oh, these ones matter and these ones don't, and more about needing to use it as a guide to know where things are bad and need to be better. And this is the city's page about it. You can look here. They do have, this is the index map that they created, where all of the ones that have the little cross hatching on them are considered environmental justice neighborhoods based on their score percentile. Let's see, asphalt question. It doesn't necessarily have to be made close to where it's put down. I mean, they have to keep it. There's different ways of doing it. You can sort of manufacture stuff warm and do it closer to where you're doing work and have like a mobile kind of setup. Or you can do what we've done here in the city, which is a hot mix plant where it's a lot like cement, where they mix it up and it goes into these trucks and then they have to get it out to where it's going before it cools down too much. And then they use it for that purpose. In fact, there's a video clip from a couple of years ago where one of the zoning administrators talks directly saying that Matte Asphalt's location in McKinley Park was strategic because of the work that they do for the Department of Transportation. The city is not evenly distributed, and so even though we're on the southwest side, McKinley Park is actually the geographic center of the city, and so that's why it's convenient for them to be able to have a facility there where they can get asphalt to where they're going. And I would say, you know, we've had similar questions in the past about whether or not we think the city should be pursuing a different method or trying to do a different, you know, material or things like that. And our goal is not really to try to find, like, we're not trying to get into, you know, optimizing materials science. What we would like to see happen is a change of priorities, and, you know, substantial. The thing is, asphalt in particular, it's cheap to put down and it's easy to take back up. And these are the kind of the selling points that people will use for it. It's like, oh, it's easy to take it down and it's easy to remove and you can replace it quickly. But it also wears out fast. And things that wear out fast that are easy to replace, like there's a word for that, and the word is disposable. You know, so asphalt is essentially like a disposable infrastructure for transit. And so a real shift would be to try to move more people onto public transit or makes more space for bike travel. You know, in our neighborhood, it's actually very hard to bike safely because of all the heavy trucking. And so there's sort of this feedback loop where you have the trucks that are damaging the roads, and then you have the asphalt that's used to repair them, and then there's all of this diesel, and all of these things are kind of cycling on top of each other. Versus if you move in the other direction and you're making bike lanes and you're narrowing the amount of roadway that has to be maintained, and you know, then you can do the same cycles in the other direction and reduce the carbon emissions. And yeah, this is running on Google Cloud. I run it on. It scales to 0. It's on what's it called? Cloud Run. So actually, if you're ever on it for a little while and all of a sudden it turns gray like this, that's because the WebSocket's timed out and you've kind of lost your connection to the host thing. It's not great, but for doing that, but it does help keep the bill considerably lower.
Awesome. Yeah, I had a few questions too. There's no questions from the audience. I was curious, because you had mentioned too, like the city's supposed to be, you know, putting monitors. You had mentioned, you know, the last kind of stance from the city was putting together, you know, kind of an advisory board to do that. Have you talked with the city at all about this site and this suggestion? Like, have they been receptive to it at all, or what is that looking like?
Yeah, we shared it with them directly. I sent it to the commissioner of public health and some of the other environmental people who are over there, as well as the Alderwoman Haddon, who is the chair of the environmental committee. And they did actually follow up with me. Essentially, they were excited about it. As you know, they had been interested in trying to find some sort of web-based tool to be able to support data collection, but did not have any expectation that they'd be able to do that in a timely way with internal resources. And so they are interested in making use of this data. And certainly one of the ways that we put it together was to try to make it you know, available to anybody who wanted to make use of it. So, you know, we hope that is something that they're going to follow through on, and we are continuing to be involved in the process of citing the monitors, and really we're just getting started. Our intention, kind of regardless of how fast and what the city does with this, is to start organizing workshops and community events where we can share this and ask people to make suggestions right there on the spot, and have it as a tool to support conversations about air pollution and you know, environmental racism.
Awesome. Yeah, and kind of on that note, your whole presentation reminded me of several months ago. We had a presentation from the Little Village Environmental Justice Organization and the Center for Neighborhood Technology, and they did something on like the truck count, counting the trucks. I think it was the asphalt company or something similar, kind of on the southwest side. Are you familiar with that truck count project that they were doing? Have you worked or are familiar with that organization at all?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, so Neighbors for Environmental Justice is part of what's called the Chicago Environmental Justice Network that consists of N4EJ and Alvejo and Southeast Task Force, People for Community Recovery, and Blacks and Green. And those organizations are also the ones that were primarily involved with the cumulative impacts assessment and are some of the ones that have been working on the air monitoring project with the city. So yeah, and the air monitor or the truck counting project certainly demonstrates the scale of that problem very vividly. That wasn't just limited to asphalt trucks. That's just trucks in general, because one of the problems we have is the explosion of warehouses. In fact, a map I got 5 years ago now through FOIA showed, this is something they'd put together, and you can see these TDLs, these little yellow squares that represent transportation, distribution, logistics facilities. And there's like 33, I think, maybe on this map, and 3 of them are north of Roosevelt. So, and that's, we've had multiple Amazon facilities open since then. So it's definitely a huge problem. And Barry, I see your question here about pulling up the environmental information for a selected address. You can do it, I guess. The way that it's set up now, I guess you can suggest it using an address, but I should update this so that you can do an address search for the data exploration. That's a good thought. So I'll probably do that. But good call.
Awesome. And yeah, thank you for that comment and question, Barry, because that brings us right to 8 o'clock. So thank you so much, Anthony, for joining us and for the wonderful presentation. And
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I will stop the recording here.